Welcome to Untrained. Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Iris.
Hi, I'm excited for episode 2 and 2A.
Season 3.
Are we going to do 2 or 2A, 2B? We've got a great guest. She's a former colleague of ours at Valor Performance. You've heard about it before. We have Inga, and I'm going to let Inga say her last name, and I'm going to admit that it's going to be hard for me. But she's an entrepreneur. She's an Olympian javelin thrower from Lithuania, and she is a coach, and she coaches leaders, she coaches professionals, especially people who are in high performance and in very high stress environments. And she just got back from the Paris Olympics because she also supports other athletes. Hi, Inga.
Hello, Iris and Whitney. It's so nice to be here. My last name is Stasiulionytė. Good luck.
Good luck, she says.
So Iris and I were trying to figure out what we most wanted to talk about with Inga, and we were batting around a lot of ideas until we both saw this post that she put up on LinkedIn, and then we knew we were going to talk about feedback. So Inga, why don't you read us 2 paragraphs from your LinkedIn post?
As a coach, I now help athletes handle criticism by reframing it, not ignoring it. We focus on controlling the narrative and using setbacks as a fuel for ongoing excellence. Growth moments should inspire us, not define us. Our worth lies how we face challenges, maintaining our values and dignity. I work with leaders on delivering feedback that upholds high standards without instilling fear. Effective feedback encourages rather than demotivates. It mirrors our internal dialogue. To cultivate excellence, our communication, both with others and within ourselves, must be rooted in respect, empathy, and the thrill of potential.
Beautiful. And such a stand for untraining fear-based feedback. So we're going to explore some alternative ways of discussing feedback.
Let's start with a story about Paris. What did you see? What was it like? Who are you supporting?
Paris was magical. Olympics. I don't know if you had that experience, but it didn't feel like Paris. It felt like Olympics. It was completely different city, which was breathing this inspiration. From sports, you could see fans, you could see so many different events, and I love how city integrated all this spirit, all this admiration for athletes, and especially when I was in track and field stadium, I was amazed how French. I don't know if it was only French, but how stadium was cheering for every athlete. And for French athletes, they didn't care if they won or lost. They just were so excited for them to participate. And you mentioned about my last post, and this is what I encounter so often when there is such a strong push to only seek for the best and for the greatest, and nothing else matters, nothing else is accepted. And this kind of mindset is so glorified everywhere. But it is so far away from true performance, a true path to the performance. So this stadium spirit and experience really, really inspired me in the whole journey what I had there. Besides me spending time with my athletes, it was just magical.
Oh, beautiful. Well, it sounds like what you're describing for those of us who weren't there was a very much everybody belongs, everybody matters. We're all part of this together. Could you say a little bit about the post you referenced and how the difference between that Paris stadium experience and the post you want to tell us a little bit more about?
I'm talking about this only admiring athletes, or in the work environments when leaders only admire the set goals or numbers you achieve or not. When I participated in Olympics and Beijing Olympics, nobody knew my story, but everybody had the judgment. I didn't win the gold. I didn't make the final. She's a tourist. Why is she even there? Do you always run this weird, but at least your tights look nice? This is literally the feedback and the comments I got after my performance in Olympics. Thankfully, I had really strong support. I was really clear why I'm there and what is my purpose in sport. So I could handle those hurtful moments, but it really left a bad taste in my mouth about the Olympics, about the athletic experience, what I had. And when I'm working with athletes right now, it is my main purpose to make sure what they're super aware how the feedback they receive. They're super aware how to handle and what critique always will be there. And then that kind of response from someone will be the judgmental response there, and then how to handle it, how to make sure what you are able to keep going and keep achieving. And those feedback's not going to stop you from your dreams. And the same I encounter, especially for leaders in sales, where they love inspiring this fear, and they feel like this is the biggest and strongest motivator for the employees, or for the team members. You win or die. So yes, this is the post that referenced that we need new language. We need a deeper understanding in what performance is and how to motivate and what is greatness in general.
Oh, I love that. That is beautiful. And why don't you tell us a little bit about, if you were giving a keynote to a bunch of folks who only knew how to motivate via fear, what would you teach them? What do you teach your clients?
When I talk to clients about the motivation, I even go to their own experiences. Like, do you really achieve how it felt when you achieved the best? Is it when you were motivated by fear and by this desperation, and when you were seeking for something because of value, how you attributed yourself towards that image, what it attributed that result, or when you actually had this inspiration, this excitement about achieving something with the purpose. Because winning on its own is one thing, but how we win, with what kind of values we approach that winning, it's completely different. And of course, in sports psychology and performance psychology, it's known, and both of you are really strong proponents of understanding that fear-based motivation is really short-lived. Yes, it's really fast to fuel. However, that fuel burns also really fast. And what's then? So big, great things require lots of time, lots of dedication, lots of falls. But all athletes, all performers gonna have a huge dip after good performances, or sometimes in their career, because this is what the normal progression to the greatness looks like. And when they are down and when you receive this bad feedback, it's so easy and painful to be there, easy to quit. And that potential is lost. So how to keep that?
So Inga, I think it's really interesting to think about as a leader, how do we give that feedback? And I've worked with people in sales as well. And one of the times, I said, do you guys celebrate some small wins, or if someone does something well, do you say something to them or let them know in the moment, right? Because positive and I won't say positive and negative, but feedback helps people understand, like, what are the expectations of, and what do you see as success? And so I said, I'm sure you spend a lot of time telling them how to do something and do it well, but do you ever tell them, oh, you're doing this well or that well, right? And he said, I don't want to say that because they're going to get complacent. I don't want to say that because they're going to get lazy. So what you just gave as an example is athletes and performance are fueled by this. It's not positivity, but it's fueled by reality, right? So here's the reality of the situation. You're doing this well, and you're specifically not doing this as well, that you can do better. So I think I just wanted to pull that out as well. Is I think some people, one of the things that's a challenge for leaders, and maybe it's just in sales or maybe you've seen it elsewhere, is if I give them positive feedback or what's deemed as positive, then they're just going to get lazy. And I think it's interesting. They're not going to get lazy. They're actually going to learn more, and maybe they'll be more motivated because they're feeling pretty good about what they're doing.
They will be more open to the next steps of learning when you have this kind of support where your efforts are appreciated, right? And appreciation, this is what's missing a lot in the employees with whom I'm working, when they say, like, I'm not appreciated, or I don't get the real feedback of am I doing well or not doing well. And this is what I actually was missing in my first workplace when I was working as a business analyst. I had no idea what success looks like in that kind of workplace. And I was so used to feedback from my sports, like with my coach. He always next to me. We're walking on the field. I do the movement. We analyze. We'll right away decide what we're going to try, what's working, what's not working. We build on what's working, and then we keep fixing what's not working. So this is exactly how I teach my leaders, clients, is to have this kind of relationship where everybody understands the intent, right? And yes, you mentioned the Iris reality. Reality seeing is very, very important. However, how you approach it, with what kind of support, with what kind of mindset, that reality makes huge difference. If you're afraid of that reality, you're going to keep ignoring. I'm not making my numbers. I'm not going to maybe see it. It's so hard to approach it. This something what is super hard, or something is not going well, and then you stagnate. You even dig your hole even deeper because you're gonna get punished. And what's the purpose? Like, whatever I'm doing, it's never good enough, or not ever gonna be good enough. And that motivation is killing all the potential, all the possibilities. But if you really intentional and very strategic with the feedback, where you both are clear with the intent, but this is the goal, this is both of us, what we are truly seeking to achieve, and aligned. Okay, this is your strengths. This is not going so well. What we're gonna try? What you gonna commit to? What would be your practice? What would be your action going forward and improving this thing? Yay! Let's go! I mean, it's completely different conversation, completely different energy. But what you also, Iris, mentioned about complacency or being, I mean, I feel this fear instilled. It's just like fake control what people feel they have over others. And again, it's really short-lived. It's really hard to keep pushing through that.
One of the things that when I talk to other athletes that start work and they go into the corporate world, one of the things that they miss most is that feedback. It's consistent. There's a relationship built on feedback. And you also know if your coach isn't giving you feedback, it's kind of not great. So if you're doing well and the coach is giving feedback, any feedback, it's good. But if they're not giving you feedback, then you're in trouble as an athlete. So I think that there was a mindset shift too. And a lot of athletes say, like, I just crave wanting to get better. And I really miss that when I'm in the corporate world or out in the real world. We just don't have that consistent feedback. One of the things, Whitney, when we were talking, I wanted to tee you up for this along the lines of what Inga was saying too, because you do a lot of IFS work, and we talked about, one of the challenges of feedback from a leader to someone that they're leading is there are parts involved, right? Or the reaction to that feedback.
Yeah. So, well, I think first I want to talk about a little bit about, and then I'm going to go into it, the feedback from our own bodies that we sometimes, as Amanda Blake says, like leave on the table and don't utilize that. And I was just talking to a client this morning we were talking about how she's a train that goes from 0 to 90 when a lot of challenges come her way, and that quickly leads to crashing and burning. And she has a lot of stuff coming up she knows is going to be stressful. So we kind of walk through what happens moment by moment and what's the information her body's giving her, and how can she use the cues from her body to shift from, I need to go from 70 miles an hour faster to, ooh, I think this means I need to pause. I'm getting an adrenaline hit. I want to start going after everything as fast as I can. That's a cue for me to pause, walk away, slow down my breathing, slow down my thinking, slow down this adrenaline rush so that I can move forward with more intention and presence and alignment, right? Because often that adrenaline pulls us out of alignment, as you were saying, Inga, to the goal sometimes. And the one thing I want to say about parts, Iris, and I really appreciate that tee up, is that we have a lot of parts within us. So back to you talking originally, Inga, like sometimes we freeze. If we feel like we can't be successful or we don't know how to be successful, we may have parts that freeze, or we may have parts that try and over effort in order to achieve something, in order to get the praise, or in order to survive, right? Because sometimes these cultures are set up survive or die, set up like survival strategies. So we may have many parts that rally us in order to get the desired outcome or to save us from a difficult outcome by shutting down, by procrastinating. I'm thinking of all the work on imposter syndrome. They were talking about how that is a hallmark of imposter syndrome, is that we shut down and we avoid or procrastinate when we feel like we're not going to be able to do it well. So what from that, Inga, do you want to pull?
I love so much what you just brought up about listening to our bodies, right? And then high performance is pure alignment of our energy, intentions, and environment. So us being on high level adrenaline, but what you mentioned about your client, and this is why athletes start hitting themselves, if you notice, during their competitions, because they don't feel body. And for them to perform, they need to be in tune, how we move, how we breathe, how we are in that technique to be able to do our best. However, adrenaline really numbs our bodies. And for us to being able to manage that alignment, that adrenaline where we still can control and fuel that into that performance, that's the best one. So you also, what you mentioned, and I want to add to the feedback. Yes, we always seek for feedback from our coaches in sports and athletics. My coaches also taught me how I should also start thinking what I'm doing and feeling what I'm doing, and myself having feedback. Where am I? How am I? What I feel and think is going on with me. And then we have that cooperation, because the more accurate information I will provide to my coach, the better he will be able to respond with his knowledge and what he sees. But it is cooperation. It is the fast-paced alignment to get to the biggest results, not hiding. And I never knew how to give that feedback, because all my life, before coming to my coach, Dan Lang, I was told what to do. And my judgment of good or bad was, am I achieving result or not? If I'm not achieving, it's not my fault. I I did everything but you told me to. So I didn't take any responsibility because I was following direction. And when I came to USC, and then Lang, my coach at the time, said, how are you feeling? It's like, how stupid is it to answer? Just tell me what to do. But also, I didn't know how to answer that question. So me learning how to listen myself, how to tune myself, I became more in control of myself, of my experiences, and how, what you said, how to set yourself up for success. I have my own unique formula. I have my own unique strengths, and my job for high performance is how to align it, how to adapt it to many different situations. Perfection is how well you are able to adapt. And this is the cooperation, what needs to be built in that relationship for feedback, providing and giving and cooperating.
The one question I want to make sure we get in before we close out this section is different. I'm hearing from my clients all the time that different generations are motivated by different things. And one way of motivating and giving feedback to one generation isn't working for another. Do you encounter that? And what advice do you have to give?
Absolutely. So this is the cooperation. This is why it matters when we start learning how we react to each other and what kind of feedback. So teaching each other how we're learning, and then communicating that, how to receive the feedback, how do I receive the feedback, and then how that feedback translates into the new action, the fastest, the easiest way. This is what we need to figure out together. However, the response and the complication becomes, it's like, I don't have a time. I'm just direct. This is how I am. I am straight shooter. And then the question becomes, with that straight shooting, are you talking to yourself? If we don't adapt to other person's ways of communication, then we're only talking to ourselves, and then being mad why, like, I'm talking Lithuanian to Japanese person and being mad why they're not understanding me.
That is exactly how it is sometimes.
Before we kind of round it out, there are a couple things I'm hearing. One is building a relationship is important to giving feedback, to having a back and forth. I think one of the things that you untrain, because this is untraining, is that feedback is a loop that's just a straight line. And feedback is a loop, right? So I can give you some feedback, you have some comments, we go back and forth about, okay, what's our aligned path forward, right? So it's not just communicating from A to B. The other piece of it too that I'm hearing from you from before too is responsibility. There's not just a responsibility of the feedback giver, but it's also the feedback receiver, right? They have responsibility to take the feedback, to interpret the feedback. That was part of your post too, is it's your responsibility to interpret that feedback. And to give yourself feedback, which I really like as well, is that you are responsible for your success and you have to take responsibility for that. The other piece of it too is the slowing down. I like that too. I think I'm pulling that from you, Whitney, too. And also when we talked about the embodiment is sometimes we can be reactive in the feedback. So how do we slow down, take a breath before we give feedback, and also maybe also notice how the other person is. If they're in a really stressful situation, perhaps not giving feedback. I mean, that's the same thing when I was coaching athletes. When they're in the middle of like, we're going to 15 touches, it's 14-14. I'm not screaming like, you really got to bend those knees and make sure your arms are, they've got too many things happening and they're at a different spot. So receiving feedback is not going to be useful, and the feedback I'm giving is not going to be useful. So those are the things I'm hearing. Do you guys have anything else that you think we were covering that is important for the audience to take away?
There's a book I often give out, Radical Candor by Kim Scott, because I think it really goes through how not to be overly aggressive, how not to be overly passive, and hit the right spot. Because a lot of people, particularly people trained in people pleasing, have a hard time being a little bit more direct. But this book really lays out how to do it and that it's good for everybody. So Radical Candor by Kim Scott.
Last thing that I wanted to say about feedback, especially giving critical feedback, right? It's not necessarily, and why people afraid to give it because they feel like it's gonna ruin relationship. But if it's gonna enhance and deepen and better relationship, there is a way to align your values by giving this deep knowledge, deep feedback. However, we need to approach that way. We need to have that kind of intent. We are here together for the same care of each other. So this is the feedback is part of that journey. And then being mindful about how we come in with that message. And as a coaches, and this is what I teach all my clients too, as in sports, you need to warm up. You need to know what is the intent of performance, what are the critical points, what gets us to success. We need to know how we need to end, with what kind of energy this competition or this meeting, and then we need to cool down. And during the situations when we notice ourselves super emotional or the person emotional, we need to take care of that emotion. No logic, no strategy will be able to process because we are too high on adrenaline.
Yeah. I hear you saying, how do we prepare well? How do we perform well? How do we recover well? So important to remember all of those.
This wraps up our first episode with Inga around feedback. Stay tuned for our second episode with Inga on grit. All right, Whitney, at the end of every episode, what do we say?
Keep untraining.
Keep untraining. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts.